I'm Jenny, coach and NLP practitioner, and I help people beat fear and self-doubt and design the life they love to thrive, not just survive. I really didn't feel safe to love fully. Now, what does fully mean? To me, fully means without restriction, without having to feel like I couldn't say I love you, without feeling like I had to hold myself in, like I was in a box. So that's what I saw as not being able to love fully, and it didn't feel safe. It felt like if I did that, something would happen. So I decided it was time to do some real research on relationships after my last one ended. And I read about attachment theories. I had coaching. I had therapy. I listened to TED Talks. I listened to relationship experts, and I joined a course about relationships. And quite often I wonder what I could have done differently, and whether, with the knowledge that I've got now, whether I would have done anything differently. And the thing is that I probably would have done things differently, but I don't think it would have made a difference in those relationships. So how could I make that help me moving forward in other relationships? I look at the traits of a person. You see them on Instagram and you see them on Facebook, and they come up and it says a narcissist in a relationship does this, or a manipulative person in a relationship does this. And I think, well, some of those were me. Like, oh, that's really upsetting. I know that's not who I am, and I know that's not my main traits. So what led me to do, and it's only one or two things. And in these lists, these lists are there, I think, to shock people, I think, to make others feel better about themselves. But for me, I look at the list and I really analyse where I fit into that programme, and found it quite upsetting that even if I checked one or two things, that what did that say about me? So I know in previous relationships I had expectations. Perhaps they were high expectations. I know I put pressure on. Perhaps it was unreasonable pressure. I know for sure I sabotaged because I wasn't getting what I was expecting and what I was putting the pressure on for. So I know that I really pushed and created some sabotaging moments in there. And I think to myself, what has changed now? Why don't I do these things now? And partly it's because I learned the tools. So I did my NLP course. I learned how to use language. I learned about my reactions and my responses. So I learned those things. But a larger part of it was that I now feel safe to love open and fully, because I know that the person I'm doing that with will give it back in the same way and will receive it. It's not about them giving it back, but they will receive it in an open and receptive way, which I wasn't getting before. And along with that, I also feel safe to love myself. It's still a process. There are still moments, like pretty much the whole of January, where I beat myself up. But the fact that it happened the whole of January and it was so noticeable tells me that I don't do that all the time. But self-love is just a process. It's like everything else. It takes time and it's a skill. And we can learn the skill of self-love. So within this exploration of relationships and my part in relationships and how I was behaving in relationships, I realised that I was very much responding to my environment and the other person. And that's what we do. We look at the other person and we respond to the feedback we get. But sometimes that's not always helpful. And I've realised, looking back, I wanted to be relaxed. I wanted to be okay with the way our relationship was. But simply I wasn't okay with it. And so I pushed because I wanted what I wanted. I wanted my expectations to be met. And I kept pushing and I kept chipping away. And little changes started to happen. And I thought, oh, great, because they'd give me that bit, the bit further forward. I go, changes are happening. Changes are going to be coming my way. It's going to be better. And I kept pushing because it wasn't what I wanted. But I also didn't want to give up. And the way I pushed was often felt from the other party as a criticism. It was me expressing my desires and my wants, but it was felt as a criticism. It was accepted as a criticism. It was taken as unreasonable behaviour. It was taken as wanting too much. And the relationship collapsed under the strain of me really wanting to give myself without holding back, but knowing that for my own safety, like the subconscious need for safety, I had to hold back. So every time I relaxed and gave a bit into the relationship, the response that came back to me would be like, whoa, and the person would pull away. And I got left feeling very on edge and very unsafe. So every time I asked for what I wanted, I was told that I was unreasonable and that I expected too much. And then I started to wonder if I was unreasonable. But the funny thing is, like, that doesn't happen anymore. I haven't been told I'm unreasonable once in the last year. And I began to realise it wasn't me being unreasonable, but it was that we weren't well suited in the relationship. We had different goals, different desires, different wants within the relationship. But I also know I definitely could have reacted differently. So when I was doing these investigations and I came across attachment styles and I read the book Attached, light bulbs were going off all over the place for me. And I learned about the 3 attachment styles. You've got anxious, you've got avoidant, and in the middle we've got secure. And 50% of the population are naturally secure. But then we have these others. The anxious and avoidance, they attract each other like magnets. And it's like the moth to the flame. And you fly at the light and go, zzz, ouch. And then you pull away and you fly back at it and you go, ouch. And then you pull away and at some point it fries out. And the relationship just can't sustain that thing. So we have the anxious person going, oh, love me, love me, love me, love me. And the avoidant person going, whoa, that's a bit heavy, that's a bit much, it's a bit quick. And the anxious person really wants to be loved, and they do lots of what they call love bombing, lots of attention and lots of praise all the time, and I want to be with you all the time, and if you don't message me back within 5 seconds, what's going on? And there's loads of worrying with the anxious person. There's lots of insecurity. The avoidant person has their own insecurity and they display that by pulling away. Whoa, this is a bit much, this is a bit heavy, this is a bit unreasonable, this is high expectations. And what happens is the avoidant pulls away and the anxious is doing this thing, and then eventually the anxious goes, that's really sad, they don't love me, and they start to walk off. The avoidant at this point wakes up and goes, oh no, I'm going to lose them, oh dear, come back. And you end up, those silver balls where you get this, and it's a complete crashing all the time of backwards and forwards and in and out. And that's when we end up with these really difficult relationships that, for my part, were exhausting. I was absolutely exhausted at the end of 4 years of doing this. And learning about that and looking at my attachment styles, which started off very avoidant, it then became very anxious, it then became very avoidant. By the time it became very avoidant, we were both avoidant. And as soon as you get 2 avoidants, we just part and go our separate ways. So how do you communicate in a secure way, and how do you learn to be secure? And can you even learn to be secure? So if you follow my videos, you will know by now that I believe that anybody can change anything given the right help and tools and processes. So yes, you definitely can learn to be secure. I have been learning to be secure over the last year, and I did that with a relationship therapist and a coaching program and doing lots of reading and listening to TED Talks and all of that kind of stuff. So what does secure look like? Because you might not recognize it. So being secure is being able to reflect on the way that you show up in your relationship. It's not about blaming the other person for everything. It's how am I showing up? Am I giving my best? Am I looking at myself as well as just the other person? And that's something I have always done. But the bit that was missing for me was the ability to trust the other person. I didn't have that. So, and that was nothing to do with, it was me thing. So it wasn't necessarily that they'd been mistrustful. I just wasn't trusting. And I think that's been a theme from a long time ago. Secure people can communicate their needs effectively. They can tell the other person what they want and why they want it, and how and what the other person can do to give them that. So that's about not expecting the other person to mind read. It's about not expecting the person to just buy you flowers if they're not somebody who buys flowers, or to just cook your dinner ready for when you get in. Just those expectations that we have. It's about not minding it, saying, oh, darling, I'd really love you to do this. And then if they don't do those things, that's when the questions come in. And it's not about unreasonable requests either. It's about just putting your needs out there and having a conversation about it. It's being able to be intimate and close with your partner. And that doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. That can be about conversations, about touch, about openness, about feeling calm and relaxed around the person. Being secure is about giving emotional support in a relationship when it's needed without expecting it back in return, and knowing that at some point you will receive that back, but being able to give it. And it's being able to receive it too. I was terrible at receiving support, really, really awful. I did not want to be helped, so I would push away a lot. And I would say things like, I can do this on my own, I don't need you. And the fact is I didn't need them, but that's not actually a very helpful thing for the other person to say in the relationship, because how does that make them feel? So putting myself now in their shoes, I think, well, that's really unhelpful. Of course, I don't necessarily need somebody, it's not about that, but telling them that I don't need them and I can do it myself was not a very good way of going about things. And being comfortable being alone and knowing that the other person will be around. And again, it was another thing that I struggled with. I realised that I've had a lifelong thought that my person with me will always leave me. And that has put me actually into long distance relationships. Even my marriage was quite long distance for much of the relationship. And I always expected the person to leave. And so being comfortable on my own was quite difficult. But there are balances to this. So in my last relationship, I found myself alone every single Sunday night. And it may well have been for practical reasons, but I found that very emotionally difficult. And that was something that really, really bothered me. And I then worked on since. I still don't really like being on my own on Sunday nights, but it's something that's not a big deal anymore. It used to be a really big deal. So being okay with being on your own is part of being in a secure relationship, but being okay with being together too. So it's about neither of them being an issue. And the thing with all of these styles and all of these things is that we can move from one to the other. It's fluid, it's not stuck. So we could be avoidant for many, many, many years, but that doesn't mean to say we'll always be avoidant. We could be anxious for very many years, but it doesn't mean to say we always have to be. And secure people also end up in relationships with people that aren't necessarily great for them either. And sometimes that can cause a push into one of the others. So what can we do about it? We can work on it, we can acknowledge it, we can talk about it, we can discuss it, we can learn with our partners, we can get the book attached and talk to each other about those things and about what we're doing. And when you recognize yourself, you can go, do you know what? I acknowledge that that's me. And acknowledging that it's you is the one thing that can help you move forward and has really helped me move forward to have very open conversations with my partner. So if you want to learn how to be more secure in your relationships, how to communicate better, how to have the confidence to say what you want, and how to love yourself, then get on a call with me. We can start those conversations so you can really make big changes in your life to live the life that you love and the one that you want and thrive, not just survive. And remember to hit all the notification buttons, the bells and whistles and all that good stuff that we like you to do. And remember to have a really powerful day.